Well, I ain't planning on I'm just saying, but you know what I'm doing. Yeah, he's in here. So chill out, that's what I'm talking about. Well, that's what I'm going down to. Well, this is what I'm talking about.
No, it's not. Okay.
Testing, testing.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for coming to our first panel. We've just started the Parsons Black Alumni group this May. Yes. First ever in 100 years. By the way, Anthony, are we recording? Okay. And my name is Nyle Fisher. I graduated in 2017, and this is my partner, Jetaun Jones.
I graduated in 2010 in fashion studies with the associate's program. Yeah, so and part of how this came about, we were at an alumni event at last year in October, and we talked about some of the things we experienced as Black creatives and some of the traumas that we dealt with, and we were just very candid and open with each other in the discussion. And from that discussion, we talked about some of the impact that it had on our mental health, and we talked about how, well, why isn't there some type of Black alumni group or something? And I said to Now, I'm like, that's because we're supposed to start it. So from there, we wrote emails, and here we are today, just to fast forward. So thank you all for coming. This is just started as an idea, and all of you are here now, so I'm just trying to hold back the tears and extra excitement. But, so we'll start with our introductions. Our first panelist is Mr. Lucky Church. And yes, let's give him a round of applause. I'm going to read a little bit about Lucky. Sorry, I'm trying to do this from my phone. So Lucky Church is a public relations consulting and client relations specialist with over 15 years of hands-on experience in the entertainment industry. Lucky is also a partner at SMF Global. He works alongside Ty Hunter and Sean Michael Frazier, His expertise in business savvy has allowed him to work alongside elite brands such as HSBC, Jordan Brand, Nike, Levi, the Grammys, Wu-Tang, Fat Joe, Playboy Club, New York City, Fox, NBC, the NBA, the NFL, and many, many more. I can keep going on and on. So let's welcome Lucky.
Our second guest is an art consultant who has really been making waves in the art world as a young black male. And he's the former special projects editor of Cultured magazine. And recently, he's been doing a lot of work with Condé Nast, including a new Vogue Ukraine cover, which came out recently, which is pretty astounding. You should definitely check it out. In addition to that, he has almost 10 years of experience as a marketing consultant for hotels, museums, artists, and the like. So without further ado, Jay Joseph.
Yay.
Drop that mic. That's right. Mike Slim. Our third and final distinguished guest. Yes. Needs no introduction.
Last but not least.
Yes. You have seen this incredible psychologist on major news networks, including MSNBC, CNN, and even more. In addition to that, you have seen him on some of your favorite entertainment networks, such as Bravo and VH1. Please welcome Dr. Jeff. Dr. Jeff Gardere.
Thank you, Matt. Of course. Thank you. Yes.
So we want you all to feel comfortable and at home because we are going to have a very candid discussion tonight, no holds barred. So kick off your shoes, feel like you're in your living room, and let's get started. Oh, and before we get started, I wanted to actually, can you stand, Austin? I want to honor Austin Green, who 50 years ago, he entered Parsons. So I wanted to pay tribute to Austin. And he also developed the mahogany card line while he was at Hallmark from 1990 to 2001. Wow. Yeah, so we have a legend in our midst. Yes, thank you, Austin.
Really, thank you everyone for coming.
Okay. So I think we should just dive right in because I'm sure everybody saw what happened with Kirby John Raymond and Business of Fashion. And the irony is that we wrote these questions probably a few weeks ago, specifically one about cultural appropriation. And then Monday, everything hits the news and Instagram and social media and all of that about Kirby John Raymond and B of Business of Fashion. So the first question, and any of you can take this one on, is with mental health being such a taboo topic in the Black community, how do we remove the stigma attached to seeking wise counsel, therapy when dealing with rejection, lack of opportunities, and possible feelings of being helpless when experiencing macro or microaggressions and cultural appropriation throughout the industry and specifically in the workplace? that's sort of long. So if you want me to repeat it, I can.
Can you break it down to 3 parts? No,
Okay.
just kidding.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw, but Ricky Smiley just did something where I don't know, he posted something for about 10, 15 minutes, actually talked about his experiences as a public figure and how he seems to have it together and have all the money and all the success, but his life is a mess. I'm not surprised, because all of our lives are messy at home, no matter what our success is. So I think it's very important, especially as we gain more success, to really check ourselves, to make sure that we're able to look at what our mental wellness, not just mental illness or mental health, mental wellness is all about. But I think having panels like this is very, very important, because it really does show others that this is something that is of vital importance in all of our cultures, but especially in this culture that we are in, because we have the macro and micro aggressions that are part of being people of color, that are part of being in the LGBTQ community, and so on. I think it's also important that we all be able to hold ourselves out as examples of having mental health challenges. I'm the first one to admit, some of you may know, I've talked about at length, not trying to get therapy from anyone, but I have generalized anxiety disorder, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. As a matter of fact, I was a few minutes late because I kept checking the stove to make sure I turned off the gas. And the funny thing, it's an electric stove, right? But I think it's important that we be able to talk about the issues, and I also have hypochondriasis. But I think it's important that we be able to talk about, with pride, that we all have our cross to bear, but also what we're doing about it, that we're getting therapy, that we encourage others to get therapy, and that's how we begin to get rid of that stigma. Charlemagne de God has been doing it. A lot of folks out there of color have been talking about it. Some people from our community have done commercials about the importance of getting a physical checkup and a mental health checkup. So finally, in passing it to my esteemed fellow panelists, it really is about, if you're running into some real emotional conflicts and you need help, and usually we all need help. You can't do it by yourself. You can't do it in your own head all the time. If you have a rotator cuff issue, if you have a knee issue, if you have a gastric issue, what do? You go see a health provider. So the same thing. I mean, we're living in 2019. Please go see the specialists and work through it, but don't just work through it. Build it. It's a muscle. Yes. The emotions are muscles, all of those things that we need, because as you get through each and every crisis, guess what? It just prepares you for another crisis. By the way, I won't throw out any, I don't want to name drop, but I've started doing, rap videos and so on with people who talk about their mental health issues, and they have me in the videos, and I'm doing counseling with them and so on. So, I mean, it's great, right? I mean, how many times can you do this, though? Yeah. But this is part of more of what we need to do. I'm just so proud of this particular generation, because they're saying it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay not okay.
That's right. Yes. Clap for that, please. And just to piggyback off you, Doc, we can't laugh at each other about it and put each other down for getting help, because that's happened to me in the past. But one major reason in the past, when I was younger, I was seeking help for something when I was in high school. And I'm not sure if the process is the same today, but because of this incident and what I went through, it made me fearful to go back for help. And that's what caused a lot of problems in my life afterwards. So I went to a doctor. I was maybe 19, and I was just having trouble with my lady. Who I've been with now. We made 23 years to this day. In high school.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I just said, let me go to the doctor. I said, I'm feeling down about myself. I didn't want to kill myself or anything, but I just felt really bad. I wanted to talk to someone. And I know that everybody said, if you feel bad, you go talk to a psychiatrist. So I went to Montefiore Hospital, actually North Central. And I said, hey, I would like to talk to someone. I'm just having some problems, and I just want to talk about it to a professional who can help guide me through. And the lady got real quiet, and she said, oh, okay, sir. I got you. Come this way. So I walk with her into a room. Next thing you know, they come in with a robe and foam slippers, and I'm like, okay, I'm 19. I've never been through this. I don't know what's happening. And next thing you know, I have foam slippers, I have a robe on, and they're like, come this way into this room. And they put me into a room and close the door. So now I'm in this room, and I'm not going to do what I'm about to do to make fun of the person, but this is just what happened. So I'm in the room, and I turn around and see him. I was like, hey, brother. And he's like, and I said, oh, shit. You know, for lack of better terminology, I said.
And that was the doctor.
So I turned and looked at him. Oh, my goodness. But I looked at this guy, and I was like, oh, my God. I said, they must think I'm crazy. And at that time, this is what I'm thinking. They must think I'm literally crazy and I'm going to kill myself. And so now I'm expressing to the nurse, like, ma'am, no. I'm knocking on the door, and I try to open it. It's locked. And I'm like talking to the girl, like, no, miss, I just need to talk to someone. And she's like, oh, I know. Keep your voice down. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, now I'm like panicking. Because now I know, and good thing that I was smart enough at that age to understand that if I raised my voice, what was going to happen next. And it was clear to me what happened next, because across the hall was another kid who started screaming. They came in, put him in a jacket, and injected him with something, which I don't know what it was. But I saw him instantly calm down, and I didn't want that to happen to me. So I just remember that they kept me in that room for maybe 12 and a half, 13 hours at 19 years old. Nobody called my family. They kept trying to give me pills the whole time I was there and just say, take this, you need this to calm yourself down. I said, but I'm not angry. I just need to talk. And that experience forever changed how I looked at doctors, how I looked at trying to reach out to somebody, because these are people that you're supposed to go and trust. You know, and I was a child, and I just needed a little guidance. So if we're gonna, yes, we need to be proactive, we need to support our community, but we also need people in position who actually know how to deal with us and understand that we're not just a number, because I realize now that I was probably just a number that needed to fill their quota.
But I think, Lucky, there was something else.
And what was that, Doc, please?
Okay, so, we have a problem right now where we have young people who may be psychotic and need to be hospitalized, right? Parents are ripping their hair out, trying to figure out how to get their kids some help, because what happens is that whomever the admitting health person is, usually maybe a social worker or a psychiatrist, will not admit the person. The person can talk, the person is obviously psychotic, but they can talk their way out of it, especially if they still have a good cognitive process going on. So what happens is they're not hospitalized, they're back out, with the parent, but they're acting out, running in front of a car, taking drugs, whatever the case may be. I really truly wonder, given this ever-important topic, and I know we're going to get to this idea of not just conscious racism, but unconscious racism and institutionalized racism. They saw a young black man walk in and say, I need to talk to someone. Is there someone that I can talk to? I'm having some issues. They may not be used to seeing that. And I wonder, and it's, I'm just throwing it out there, whether by seeing you in that way, being so coherent, being in a way, hi Mashonda, being in a, calling people out, right? Being such a gentleman about wanting to talk to someone, whether they thought they really haven't seen something like that. Normally, when we're coming in, it's either the cops bringing us in or, the situation of, just banging, the doors to get in because you may be so psychotic. So I really wondered, for them to do something so unorthodox, so wrong, so egregious, whether that might have been some sort of institutional racism. I may be wrong, but I don't know.
Come on, Reverend.
Yes. And I wonder if perhaps, Jay, you could speak to with these comments in mind, how that can sort of translate into your daily life as a creative.
I can only speak from my own personal experience, as I was speaking to Anthony earlier. And just within the last 4 months, I suffered like 3 different traumatic losses. My father passed away. My father.
Condolences.
My father recently passed away. At the same time, there were some other things happening amongst in my relationship at the time, and also like some other personal things happening in my life that all at the same time was happening, and I was just like, okay, how do I keep myself together? I was like, I know that I'm not crazy. I don't want to commit suicide. I'm not trying to like drug myself, because that's the thing that everyone goes to first. They're like, oh, like, he's going to be a ticking time bomb, or she's going to be a ticking time bomb, or watch out, she's on suicide notice. And it's like, that's not what it was. But I wanted to know how to care for myself. So I just quit everything. And Mashonda can tell you, I was like, I can quit everything. I don't want to deal with anybody. I'll stay in the bed all day. I'll stay in the house. I'll go vacation for 3 months, if I can, and then take care of myself. But for me, the most important thing is like, what do I know best in order to take care of myself outside of just seeing someone? And it was my family. It was like, who can I lean on? Like, I have to lean on my family. I have to lean on my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, my uncles, who all showed up in the biggest way possible. And for me, that was the best form of mental wellness that I could have done for myself at that time. Or else I wouldn't be sitting here today at all.
Thank God you had the family to rely on for that.
Absolutely.
Because so many of us don't have that.
Absolutely.
So we have outside family, extended family, friends, like my brother Elliot over here, my sister Carol, who have had my back in many ways. But that extended family of friends is also just as important. So I couldn't agree more, brother. Yeah.
And I want to push just a little bit further, and perhaps Mr. Church, you can also jump in on this without getting into specifics, I guess your day-to-day lives. I'm sure you work around a lot of majority white offices and such, and various companies. So I'm just wondering, when you were going through that, this rough patch, which I'm sure you're still going through. Do you find that people are, sympathetic enough as you would like them to be, or do you find that, there might be something else going on? You just feel like, there's not enough humanity? I just kind of want to...
At all. Okay. Not enough.
They're not. People aren't naturally empathetic, and I think that's something you have to learn. Fortunately for me, like I said, like my family are a group of people that I can lean on, and I learned this is a learned behavior, and it's something that how I was cared for, being reared up in the family that I do have. And I treat everyone, anybody that's in the room that's close to me, I treat everyone like family. No matter how long that I've known you, that's the respect that I give to you. And I think that when someone is going through something, or people are so like, they're like, I got to deal with my own problems, or I don't want to be there for you when you're going through this, or whatever. I don't know how you're going to be tomorrow, or what's going to happen like later on, or whatnot. Like, are you going to turn on me? Like, come on.
And on more what you're talking about too is sometimes being the only one in the room, it's hard to know what to do in those situations, because you want to fight the good fight, but then you don't want to become the angry black person in the room who's always throwing and playing that card. This is what they tell you. And I'm going to give you one example of a company. I'm not going to say any names or get specific, like we said. But I was hired to come in and run the concierge division and to run the PR division for a big firm. my brother brought me in, who was black, of course, because I'm black. So it was two of us there. But I was alone in my position, and I was bringing in money, bringing in revenue, and diversity is always what we are giving. Please bring the diversity. And then it gets to a point where they say, okay, we've had enough diversity. And I'll give you an example. I did an event. They couldn't find anyone to come to this event. 24 hours before the event starts, I get a call from the CEO. Please get people here. Whatever you can do. I said, fine. I got 150, almost 200 people there the next day. The next day after the event, she's like, at the event, she's hugging me, kissing me. Oh, I love you. Great. Amazing job. The next day at the office, lucky, wonderful job. But next time, not so BET.
Wow.
And my first thought was, well, I can't even say what my first thought was, but who the hell, you know what I mean? But then I had to reevaluate, why did she feel so comfortable to say that to me? Was the real question. And I backtracked my time with her, and I said, I looked at my action, and my actions led her to believe that it was okay for her to say that to me. Now, here's the good and the bad of that aspect. Because you have to respect that aspect in some points, because that when you play the game with them, you're allowed to see things that nobody else has seen. So that person who's playing that game has value, whether they see it or not, whether they've gotten to that position and they've forgotten about us and saying, I'm going to climb up this ladder. Regardless, we have an eye and an ear inside that we never would have had before. The issue is now they feel comfortable enough to say stuff to me, and now I'm at a choice where, do I blast her and blow this out to proportion and get the rights and stuff we need, or do I fight a little bit longer in this battle and allow them to keep saying and revealing themselves? And that's always an issue when I'm in these companies and in these rooms.
So from that, this leads perfectly into this question. How do we take a stand and hold the industry accountable for inappropriate actions? How do we create true change and bring about true diversity and social sensitivity? Because if we feel like we're coming across as the angry black person, if we do voice our true feelings or how we felt disrespected or wronged in a certain situation, what is the most sensible and effective way to get our point across? Anybody?
Sometimes I feel like there is a sensible way.
Yeah.
I'm emotional before anything else.
And I agree with that. I feel like there is no appropriate way, but all ways need to be executed. Is the best way I can say it.
Maybe just the most honest way, whatever it is.
It just needs to always be honest and coming from a pure place.
Okay.
Because there's a trickle effect still with it. If you are the angry black guy at the company, you now ruin the chances for other people coming behind you, because now they don't want to let anybody else in. They want to block you off, and they don't care anymore at that point. You know what I mean? Or are you the one who's going to break that ceiling and just say, forget it, and build our own? And I think the true answer is building our own and having our own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which most people don't see the reasoning for us having our own. They always complain, why is there BET? Because you gave us a reason that we needed to have it, because you weren't giving us an outlet, even though we sold it back. But we need the outlet because you are not providing enough for us to be seen.
Yeah.
So we need to be seen. I need to see the black Barbie. I need to see the black version of everything. But they get mad at us when we say that. I'm sorry, Doc.
But I do think it is a very intricate dance for those of us who are inside and making the changes. You don't want to be the angry black person, but you certainly want to be the insistent, consistent black person, assertive black person who can call out certain things. Do you shout it out? Maybe it may come to that at some point, but this is where I really do believe that you have to be able to come in and out of the code, be able to work within the system and outside of the system. But I would tell you, if you are taking that on, excuse my French, but your shit better not stink.
That's right.
Okay? You better follow the rules. You better live by what you say. If you're asking for certain standards as to how people should be treated, you have to be front and center of treating people that way. This way they don't have anything on you, and you're able to make changes, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, but if it comes down to some sort of legal liability where they decide that you're being a little bit, too transformative, then at least you have all your ducks lined up in a row, proper legal representation, and again, never let them see you sweat. Everything is by the rules, everything by the numbers.
And just to add to what he said, be ready to deal with the consequences of your decision. If you're going to do something, own it to the full extent. I've been on both sides of the fence where, like I just told you, how I know I messed up early in my career where I could have made more of an impact if I would have fought a little bit harder in that situation. And then moving forward, I have a situation now where I am fighting that fight a lot harder with a company I'm dealing with right now, but I am paying the ultimate price for it. And it's the same way when I mentor a lot of kids that I work with, because they know that I dress a certain way. So I'm known for wearing my fitted hats and my t-shirts and jerseys and stuff like that. And when I talk to them, I say, look, this is the battle I chose. I chose this battle to look this way because I know I can walk into a room with a fitted hat and look like the local gangster, but be eloquent enough to speak to people where they go, oh, and they see somebody in this outfit differently. So that's a fight I chose for that purpose, but everybody cannot handle that. Cannot handle walking into a room and people handing you the coat. I've been in rooms where, my own office, where they're coming to see me, and they threw their coat at me on some Devil Wears Prada stuff. Even at an event I had Tuesday that I just literally had at a club that I work with, and people were throwing their coats at me and not knowing, and my name is on the door, So it's real out here, y'all.
It sure is. We are going to definitely come back to code switching, but before we go on to the next question, we wanted to quickly dissect the Kirby John Raymond situation, because I know that's what everybody wants to talk about.
I saw all the steam come out those ears.
So behind us we have a quote from a recent article where basically they're recounting what happened, and Kirby, this is a quote from Kirby when he entered the Business of Fashion 500, Top 500 Gala. The straw that broke the... Oh, sorry. If you don't know the backstory, he was in the running to have a cover of their esteemed fashion issue. After having several meetings where they picked Kirby's brain to find out who their diversity, I guess, features could be, and I guess just extracted a lot of information from Kirby, they decided to, put somebody else on the cover, which, this type of thing happens all the time in magazines, but you would think that Kirby is used to this type of thing happen, so to have a reaction like this, there has to be a little bit more to the story. So let's just read what Kirby said. Straw that broke the camel's back, he says, was arriving to the BOF 500 Gala and seeing a black gospel choir. This man, Imran, who's the CEO of Editor-in-Chief of Business of Fashion, turns into Kirk Franklin and starts dancing on the stage with them and to a room full of white people. John Raymond recalls, what motivates someone to feel that they have the right to do a Kirk Franklin dance on the stage? Because ultimately, that level of entitlement is the core issue. People feeling like they can buy or own whatever they want. If that thing pertains to blackness, we're always up for sale. Some of the black attendees present felt so terrible and helpless that they left the event in tears, Kirby explained. Do you gentlemen have anything to say about that?
Well, I'll say this very quickly because I'm not a fashion guy, as you can tell, right?
Come on, Sharp.
I don't know about that.
Why are we so surprised? Because it's in the fashion field, because you guys are supposed to be smarter, because you're supposed to be more creative, because your minds are supposed to be open more. because you have many more different influences, diversity, race, sexuality, and so on. No, this happens in every industry. It hurts even more in this industry because I would think they're supposed to know better. You all are supposed to know better. But that ingrained, institutional, unconscious racism is real. And what happened with this gentleman, who is he Haitian, by the way? Yeah, just like me. When they told him, first of all, they picked his brain. They didn't just pick his brain, they raped his brain. Took as much information as possible and then decided, well, we don't need you for this, or maybe there was some player hating going on or something. But, you know, the typical, we've all heard it, oh, we've decided to go in another direction. Okay? This is part and parcel of a lot of these industries. But I know.
And this is in no way any disrespect to the brother, because I love him and he's an amazing designer. Anyone who's seen this show knows he's brilliant. But from my personal perspective, it comes from drinking the Kool-Aid a little too much. We always think we are exempt because we had one step in the door. And I'm talking from experience. We get the golden ticket, we get the pat on the back, the pat on the head, and a biscuit, and we're like, oh, you know, I've made it, and we forget for a second, because if anybody who's read the article know in the beginning, he said, my instincts told me not to go. And how many of us have had those instincts when we shouldn't have done something? You know what I mean? I've had those instincts with the first experience I told you, with the young lady I worked for. My gut told me, but because of my heart and me wanting to do something for my brother and help him, led me to a situation where I lost myself a little bit. And that's what happened to the brother. He lost himself for a second. He was caught up in the hype of everything he was going through, the acceptance that was overflowing for him right now in this moment, and he just forgot for a second, and he was reminded quickly. And Jamie Foxx went through the same thing when he talked about the incident in the car in Beverly Hills. You know, and I, you know, please forgive me for using it, but I have to say it the way he said it. He was like, I remembered in that moment when the cop stopped me that I was just a nigga in the Benz and nothing more. So I digress my case.
I have a question, just continuing on. Have you guys seen some of the Instagram posts that Kirby Jean, and am I saying his?
I saw them. Yeah.
Am I saying Raymond correctly? The Haitian.
It's Raymond. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jean.
What do you, Kirby Jean Raymond? How? Raymond. That's the part I thought I had messed up. With the way he responded, what do you think of that? Because he was, you know, he had middle fingers up and that type of thing. So does anyone have any comment about that? Or Jay, you looking at it? Oh, no. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Well, I do.
It's like that's how we felt.
Comment about it, I think that his reaction is valid.
Yeah. And it was his honest reaction.
You said I like it, Dr. J?
Well, no, I was saying that I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm finished.
No, you're not. You know, I think we have to be careful, and I know you weren't doing this, but as the OG up here, right? I think we need to be careful not to victimize the victim, you know.
But we got
and well, yes, and it was the wake-up call, right? And that happens to so many of us, where we tend to forget ourselves because we've been able to fight for so many things, and we have to be reminded. But the way that he responded, I think, spoke fundamentally to the pain that he is in, was in, and that we see so many people are in that pain, and he was able to express himself. Now, I don't think maybe we would, from what I can tell from my quick psychological analysis, may have responded in that way, but you know, that was pain, and I think that talks about the pain that so many of us carry around all the time, and we don't express it to the point of where, you know, there's an old saying that I remember from the Caribbean: the one who you think can only break one plate is the one who can break 1,000, because they've just been so quiet and so pliant and holding on for it. So I really do hope that he's working with this pain.
And can I say one thing real quick? Sorry. And back to what you're saying, the life of a black person is similar to that of a squirrel. I forgot who said the joke best, but when you see a squirrel, they're nervous constantly. They're looking around. They don't know what their next move is. And just by using myself as example, when I first walk out the door, I'm overthinking my first 10 steps just as I walk to the store. If there's a white person in front of me, am I walking too close? Do I have my hood on? Do I have to take it off because I look too aggressive for this person? So I can understand the mindset of somebody like him who's been through this before with so many companies, though we should learn from our past mistakes, which we always don't. But I totally get his frustration. I get where you're coming from.
So what you both said just kind of segues into the next question. And we had this one specifically for Dr. Jeff as a mental health professional. With black people having to hold on to so much anger a lot of times and have to calculate our steps and be so conscious about how we're perceived by others. What are some of the warning signs that we should look out for in ourselves, family members, or friends that indicate we are suffering from a trauma or mental break? When, if ever, is it appropriate for us to step in when we recognize these signs in others?
Well, and I think this is something really we can all talk about, right? All of us can talk about this because we've seen it, we've experienced it, but I'll just leave it very general and say, if someone is not happy, maybe an intervention needs to be made because we all deserve to be happy. If someone is isolating themselves and feel that they can't communicate or talk about the pain that they're in, then I think person needs that attention. If the person is self-medicating, overdoing it on alcohol or drugs or sex or other things, where we're seeing that the behavior is becoming self-destructive, then we need to step in. That's a therapy. And for therapy. And we know the obvious things about psychosis, hearing voices, seeing things, being homicidal, being suicidal, we instantly step in. That's when we may even have to call 911 if we can't convince that person to go to an emergency room. We can't look at it as, well, maybe they'll be okay. Or if someone starts joking consistently about suicide, or may even say something like, you know what, I don't care whether I wake up or not tomorrow. Now, I know we've all felt that way. We're not suicidal, but if you're hearing that consistently, maybe there's a depression there. So if they can't make that step, then it's important that you help them make that step.
Thank you for that, Dr. Judd.
I have a question as well, because I've always seen that other families, because I'm so engrossed in my family, have had other family and friends who their families are kind of shy away from intervention. How would you introduce the practice of intervention to a family that is not used to that sort of? That's a great question.
That is a great question. I don't even know if I have an answer for that one. Sometimes there needs to be an intervention for the family. Okay, especially if they are in denial as to what's going on. I would think that most of us in this room have probably dealt with emotional or sexual abuse, perhaps from our own childhoods. And I say that is the worst kept family secret, because people know what's going on, but they don't want to acknowledge it because it's so damn painful. So it may take another family or another person to say, this isn't just about the individual that we all care about, that you all care about, but it's also about the family. The family needs an intervention. Let's talk to as many people as possible, get you all going in a direction, in a therapeutic direction, so that you then can focus on what we call the identified patient. You see, the thing with the identified patient is, there ain't nothing going on with us. It's that person in our family who has all the issues. When in fact, it's what we call the splitting, the projection, and that identified patient, for some reason, accepts that role because maybe they're getting some sort of attention for it, even though it's not healthy attention, but it is positive reinforcement. And then the family, they don't have to look at themselves, and they could say, well, it's that person's issue. So it's about the intervention for the family. And don't ever ask me another question. You had me, my head hurts now.
Time for an audience question. Watch somebody ask Dr. Joe. Did anybody have any questions or comments that they wanted to make, or just be brave?
I know you got
Take the gentleman right here.
Thank you. My name is Sasha. I'm a professor here at Parsons, and not a gentleman, and that's part of the question. I have a question about how people deal with just the mind share, just the mental load, because you've described a situation that probably a lot of us are familiar with, which is you go through the day, people make a million stupid comments, and they just assume that you're, whatever they assume based on your appearance, either they assume you're going to rob their grocery store, or they assume that I'm going to rape their children because I'm trans and I'm wearing not what they're expecting, or they just make assumptions, etc. So you can be like the angry person who tries to like reform the institution, etc. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But then at the end of the day, whoever made the shitty comment like is going on with their life, and then you're at home in bed and you're like angry and not able to sleep because they didn't care, and then you care and it's keeping you awake, and it's just taking up your mind share from being creative and going on with your life. How do you deal with that?
Other people's projections of you, that's shit that you don't have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's a hard question, and let me explain why. Because yes, when things affect me personally, it's a lot easier for me to roll it off. My problem is when it affects the people around me. And when I'll give you an example, I recently had an event where I was dealing with Dave East. So we had a bunch of kids lined up outside, a bunch of black kids lined up to see him. So on the corners of each block were police officers. So halfway through the event, they're not letting the kids in, but the kids are orderly. So I'm outside talking to them. Long story short, a white lady comes out, she's in her 70s, comes out of nowhere. And she's walking down the street in the middle and going, she's like, you niggas, you motherfuckers, you stink, you messed up my neighborhood. And I'm in shock. Because first of all, I'm like, what year is this? I'm forgetting what's going on. I'm like losing my mind. I'm ready to flip out. My reaction, but I look at these kids. And I look at these police officers. So as she continues to scream, I just scream over her. We love you, miss. We love you. Just keep moving. We love you. And she said, well, I don't love you. I hate you. I hope you die. And I said, well, I hope you live forever, and I hope you live to see black people free. And she just looks at me, and then she just walks on down the street. She's walking, and then my next reaction, I turned to the police officer. I said, this is why people hate y'all.
Thank you.
I said, you see what was happening here to these kids. Now, if one of these kids would have reacted, this would have been a news story everywhere. Not paying attention to what provoked them, but to them reacting to somebody pushing their button. And that's when things rile me up. When I see it happening to our kids who sometimes just don't know no better, just need a little guidance because they've never dealt with it on the level that I have. That's what bothers me. Or when I see a child who's like, 7, 8 years old, dealing with comments that they can't really process. So I understand your question, but I can't fully answer it because I'm conflicted on both sides of the fence.
Well, as a psychologist, I'd certainly like to address it. I like that term, mind share, because if you don't share what's on your mind will explode. And so it's important, you see, you don't always have to see a therapist. For the therapist in the room, I hope I'm not robbing any money out of your pockets, okay? Sometimes it's getting on the telephone and not biatching, okay, but actually talking.
Yes.
This is what happened. This is what I'm experiencing. What have you experienced? Can you relate to this? And what did you do about it? What can I do about it? How do I do something that is productive? See, that's healthy. That's getting it off your mind. You know, having a drink with someone, talking to family about it. The person I talk to in my home is not my wife. It's the babysitter. Why? She's closer to my age. Some other reasons that Mashonda knows we won't get into. Nothing nefarious. But she can relate, you know, from my generation, and, you know, we're both Caribbeans and so on. So, you know, we could talk about what has happened to Caribbeans, what has happened to people of color. But it never gets into, and this is the honest to God truth, I hate those honky MFers, you know, those cracker, what, I said it, right? It never gets into that because you know what? It's not productive. And that's hate. And then that's copying what we see because that hate is not good inside of us. That's what, you know, leads us to chronic physical issues, mental health issues. So it's important that you talk. Mashonda and I have talked over the years about certain things that we share, that we go through. You know, talk about family and so on. She did a great job with a blended family. You've got to get her book, by the way. And so being able to write about it, being able to talk about it, and finding empowerment strategies, keeping it positive, because when you don't, then you have a president of the United States who says that the impeachment hearings are bullshit. See, that's not productive. He's not trying to figure his way out. Now you've lost control. And losing control means now that there's something wrong, really wrong. But I'll tell you what, the other thing that I saw happening with this woman who was saying all those things, now that's someone I might look at perhaps who maybe needs an intervention, who may need to be hospitalized, because it's crazy behavior that you would say that so loud to people of color in such an inappropriate way that you would say that about anyone. And so we have to begin to understand, and this goes back to what you're saying, that we don't have to own some of this stuff. You're absolutely right. Because sometimes we can actually say to someone, this isn't about me, is it? This is about someone else that you've had an issue with, or something that happened to you in your life, a trauma that you've never worked through. So it's easy now to just look for scapegoats, to let that hate out, and it almost becomes like a psychosis. I think racism, by the way, is a mental illness because it's based on delusional thinking.
Preach, brother. And to add off of what you're saying, please clap for that. Clap for that. Just to add to what he's saying, the other aspect of being able to talk about it and open freely, if someone is talking to you, learn to listen. It is so important sometimes to just shut up and listen and let somebody get something off their chest. Sometimes people do not need your 2 cents. They don't need your opinion. They just want to release and let it go. You know what I mean? So as much as you want to give something to release out, you know how it feels when you just want to talk. Be mindful of that when somebody's bringing you their problem.
Just to tie this one up nicely, I just want to clarify. So if someone is dealing with day-to-day microaggressions, whether it be racism or transphobia, whether it be in person or online, is the way to stop that from building up and, you know, compounding, and eventually you're becoming that woman who's screaming down the street, is the way through that to talk about it and to just release it through conversation?
More than talking about it, doing something about it. Because the empowerment is what gives you the positive energy that you need. So yes, talking about it is great because then you find coping strategies, you're able to get it off your chest. Catharsis is a beautiful thing. You know, I don't know for, you know, if some of you, if you've had headaches or backaches or stomach aches, and then you find that you've been able to talk about something that's been on your soul for a while, all of a sudden you feel better. You know, that's why in therapy sometimes you let people talk for 45 or 50 minutes or whatever the case and don't say a word, not trying to solve, but just listen, because they've been waiting for someone to listen. But it's also about, you see, after a trauma, you can be a victim where you're stuck forever, or you can be a survivor. We hear that term survivor, where now you've fundamentally changed and now you're moving on with your life. but you still carry that wound, psychological wound, or you can become a victor, which means now you own this situation that traumatized you, and so part of that healing now is helping to heal others. And by healing so many, it makes you so strong. So there are so many things you can do, whether it's artistic, whether, it's therapy, whether it's writing, whether it's dance, whether it's fashion, the things that we wear, the way that we look, how you design, all of that has been tied into not only your creativity, but the situations throughout your childhood, through your education, and through your day-to-day experience in a divided America that makes you who you are. Victory.
Wakanda forever.
Another audience question, the gentleman right here. Elliot, right? I think, yeah.
My name. Good evening.
Give him a word, Elliot.
No, I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to say two things really quick. Number one, I think it was really interesting that you all had the quote that you had up here, and I just wanted to acknowledge my sister Channing, who wrote that article on Kirby. She writes,
Boom!
Yeah.
Yay!
Who is the fashion news writer at Refinery 29, and I'm so proud of her, and I love her very much. And we vent all the time. And I won't really talk about I could share so much, but I work in a very interesting space in this industry, and I really, I appreciate the fact that I call myself an outsider who happens to be inside, and I've been an outsider all of my life, but I understand the blessing and the strategy in that position. If you can't hear it, I'm from the South, I'm from Florida, and I've been working in fashion since I was 19, but I will say that one of the things that I know, and I said in a very interesting conversation today I was the only black person in the room with a handful of top executives in this business discussing the Kirby John Raymond issue, his response. And it was interesting that all of them who were sitting at the table, they all are in agreement. They all feel that what he did was right. They all feel that he should have shared his voice. But what was interesting is nobody felt the need to respond to it or say anything about it publicly. This is the issue that I have. And one of the things that we're talking about is the power of our voice and using our voice. And I will say, even to the people of color in this room, and you all said something about the picture. How did you all respond to the picture that he posted where the slideshow and he was flicking the camera off? Well, for me, the thing about that picture, I thought it was beautiful. The caption was "Angry Black Man," but all of the people that were sitting at the table with him in the picture, none of them responded to what he said. I'm talking about publicly. Everyone probably sent texts, they probably sent DMs, they probably called him on the phone and said anything, but he engaged a public conversation that I find is really interesting, that when one of ours is brave enough, because it takes a lot of bravery to do that, one of us is courageous enough to say, look, this is my experience and I'm frustrated and I'm tired, we don't rally behind that. And I'll say, because the response that I made, I never really look at my posts to see how many likes or comments, but that one I did, and I got more DMs about what I said than I did interaction publicly. And there was a lot of other industry professionals who I am connected with, and they said to me, well, we can't say anything. But why can't you? Who told you can't say anything? But I understand, for me, the blessing of my position is I have no authorities over me in that. I have no one telling me, again, at the least I can do is lose my job, which they would never, fire. And I'm saying that, I have literally had to, and I don't say it proudly, but I have literally had to cuss my authorities out, just in terms of, you have to listen to what I have to say. And I've always been a person, thank you for that, Dr. Jeff. My parents raised me to be a person who speaks up, and I was the child that was allowed to talk back, so I was always allowed to express myself. But I understand, so a lot of people are not used to that, but I'm just saying, as creatives, it can't always just be in your art, because they appreciate our art, they appreciate what we produce. It's our voice that they have a problem with, and your voice is the most powerful thing that you have. And if anytime you get an opportunity to use your voice, I just want to encourage you, please use it. Practice talking. If you got to talk in the damn mirror, get in the mirror and talk, get on the phone. I mean, just practice it. But your social media, your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, all of that, I mean, you guys, we have a voice. We have powerful voices. It's just as powerful as your art, your photography, your design, all of that. You don't have to channel everything into that and feel like as a person your existence has to be silent, because it does not.
That's right. Excuse me, before we continue, clap for him, yes, please.
Thank you.
Don't pause that clap. Do not pause it. Please stand up, Elliot, and please stand up, Carol.
Yes.
The reason I want these two to stand up is because it's not often that people behind the scenes who are doing so much for us without fear, without looking for something from it, doesn't want anything, just wants to help everyone and help build. These are two people behind the scenes in a major way that are doing more things for black creatives than you could ever imagine. Okay? So we need to give it up to these two people here. And they've been, they have also been my voice of reason, like my brother here. We all need those voices of reason that tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you could be doing this better, or you could be using your creativity a little bit better to push over here and move wiser this way. So I thank you both for all you've done for us and all you've done for me. I love you both dearly.
Thank you. So we're going to move on. We'll probably get some more questions, but we have one question we want to ask first. So go ahead.
All right. There's a saying, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks.
There was a saying.
There was a saying in the Bible. Fashion and art in general is definitely a mouthpiece for the individual that creates whatever design is in question. So when we see offensive imagery, i.e. Gucci, Prada, Burberry, which is on the screen right now, would you say it's safe to say that racism is in the heart of these designers that created these pieces? And is it ignorance or is it intentional?
I would say having it in the heart would be dumbing it down. It's more in the DNA. And when it's in the DNA, sometimes you don't know what you're even doing because you're just so used to it. And there comes a privilege that they just don't know they have, so they don't take that into accountability.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but as a publicist, we've heard it said several times that these things are a marketing scheme at this point, and it's for publicity.
And there are many degrees that I feel that is 100% true, because they know they can get away with it. They know, yes, we'll protest for 5 minutes, Al Sharpton to come out, slide in the shoes, and then we will go back to wearing Gucci or wearing whatever product that is that they made fun. And you know what I mean? So until we really show them that we're going to support our own designers, we're going to keep creating our own and stand behind our words, they're going to keep repeating the cycle because we allow them to. We keep spinning the wheel with them, but then we keep pointing the finger and blaming them.
And also, Black Twitter, Black Instagram, etc., they erupt when these things happen. So it is sort of, is it good marketing on their part that they get so much social media engagement every time this happens, and all you see is their brand name and their moniker over and over and over and over again?
And the answer is yes. Yeah. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Back to us, owning our own voice. That goes back to us owning our own voice. And if we have that much power, especially on a social media platform, that it is called #Black Twitter, which is it's the strongest voice on the platform by far.
Think about it. Black Twitter is the reason the Gucci thing happened with Dapper Dan, pretty much. And I think me and one of the young ladies were talking about this a little earlier right here, because I was saying, okay, yes, he stole the patterns, he made the designs, they came back, tried to do the same thing. He, the whole Black Twitter thing, now he's in the offices. But does anybody think it was a coincidence that shortly thereafter, then this was released? Where are we in the conversation? We're there, but does our opinion and does our effort really matter in their eyes? You know, are they really getting us in there just to say, hey, welcome, we got one, the quota filled, or are we really making moves and making a difference?
So that goes back to one of our other questions. Which do you view as more important? And you touched on it a little bit, Dr. Jeff, but which do you view as more important, creating our own table or demanding a seat at the existing table? Or is it both?
Build your own table and let them come.
Okay.
I think yes, building our own is the utmost importance, but I do think both are important. Because if they're going to appropriate, they need to have us there curating it, so they can at least be authentic with it. And if you want to show that we're working and we're community, then even the numbers in your community that you call this private world of fashion, that you guys are doing all these things, and anybody knows as you climb up the ladder in fashion, there's less and less and less and less of us at the top. So they're both important. We just got to respect both roles, in my opinion. But we definitely need to build our own. But we can't build our own if we don't support our own.
And I just want to say this, and then I want to make sure we get your question over there. I see you. When you said that, okay, we'll boycott for 5 minutes and then we're back to buying Gucci, what do we do to build the consistency where people say, black people stop, we let them know that this is not okay and we stop buying Gucci?
It's courage and peer pressure. We want to be seen in the latest thing that's the coolest that the people wearing on TV. We want to be seen. We have to stop caring about. That's why I love my business partner, Ty Hunter. He's the king of vintage shopping and just finding old pieces. He'll take a $20 outfit and you would think he spent thousands of dollars on it. You know, and he supports a lot of black designers. We want to, like I said, put up this fist in protest. We want to put up our fist in protest, but we don't want to pay the consequences of maybe seeing that designer or walk into a fashion show and, they say, who's that? And now you got to explain. Oh, it's a friend bought this for me as a black designer. I really would have bought this myself. There's a whole explanation, and there's no pride when we're wearing our own people. So if we can do that, then it'll be a real tilt in the scale and a change.
I also just want to add to that for clarification's sake, and this will be something that we're discussing on our upcoming podcast, that you can't effectively boycott Gucci in the first place, because you have to understand that there are fashion conglomerates that own so many different brands. So if you're gonna boycott Gucci to go buy Burberry, what if they're owned by the same company?
Yeah. Research. You know what I mean? And I agree with you 100%. All it takes is research. There are so many designers out there, so many brands. We have options. We're just not choosing them. We want to make ourselves broke to support these designers, and it's foolish. I've been to, friends of mine's houses who, have tuna fish in the fridge, $1,000 worth of shoes. You know what I mean? It makes no sense.
At least they're eating healthy.
Yeah. And walking to the store expensively.